if the equipment helps you in a skill, removing the equipment will transfer to a skill. Can you explain that thought process a little bit?
Yeah. So basically, in skill development, there's constraints that you can add that change the movement pattern. And what everybody should know about motor skill and motor skill development is that it's a constantly changing process and it's very flexible, but it's task oriented. So a lot of people think it's repeating the solution over and over again. That is how we learn, but it's actually solving the problem over and over again. That's how we learn. So, I mean, frankly, that idea of just like repeating perfect technique the exact same way all the time doesn't help us get much better technically. But repeating perfect technique with like changes and with slight changes to that, that's what actually helps our brain find what's the most optimal way of solving that problem. So that's where when we use equipment, it's almost never like where we're just 20 reps with whatever the equipment is. It's normally going on and off with that. So they're recognizing what the equipment actually does, or kind of in a pattern to where the equipment fades away, or like a contrasting thing where it's two drastically different things and you're trying to do the same skill, whether that's swimming as fast as you can with two completely different types of equipment. We learn a lot faster that way than if we were to even do the same volume of exercises, but in like a block model where it's all this and then all that. So basically, by changing that, it's an idea. It's called differential learning in skill development, to where it's a bunch of different just ways of solving a similar problem thrown at you. You kind of keep the average in your mind, and that's normally the most efficient way of doing things. Um, so that's kind of how we do that. And then also there's another idea called the constraints led approach, where you're adding constraints that basically make the solution to that movement problem what would be optimal. And our goal as coaches is to give them constraints that make it optimal. And then I like to take the equipment off and do it normally. So right when it's really fresh in their mind, they do that. So it's connecting the dots there.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I need you to put all of that into a tweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing about Twitter. It's just so short.
Yeah.
It's hard to get depth. But okay, so what are some, just give me an example of like, this is the constraint, this is what we're trying to get to, and just I don't know, just give me an example what you would do.
Um, so here's something kind of similar that we've been doing recently. So it would be like, let's say it's long course, 250s, freestyle with a snorkel, buoy at your ankles, paddles, fewest strokes possible. Um, Take those off, long with like add fins, fast kick, still like fewest strokes possible, but constant kick, never stopping the arms. Then take the fins off, 4 25s, max speed with 100 breathing. First two, just the right paddle. Second two, just the left paddle. Um, and then maybe finish with like 2 25s at 100 pace, just perfect technique, and repeat that 2 or 3 times. So it's a lot of different things, but it's all in the goal of like staying balanced, making sure you're pulling straight forward. Like the buoy at ankles and fewest strokes possible is good for holding water, because the optimal solution will be the most efficient hand path. So you'll see once you see people doing that and they're able to, I mean, if they're going short course and they're going less than 10 strokes a lap, that's normally pretty good. And if you're going out like that or anything, you won't be able to do that in few strokes, because it's an inefficient way. And the buoy at the ankles, your legs are moving around. So it's teaching that, and then removing that and just going into normal swimming, or adding fins where the legs are doing even more of pushing your body forward. It's changing what your body's doing. But like the optimal solution is still valid. And it's like all of those mixed together. Normally, when they just swim normally, you'll see them, it changes much faster than just trying to like teach it into them.
Yeah, yeah, man, that makes sense. And then when you're just trying to like teach it to them,
Mm.
you don't notice, or the swimmer won't notice when something's wrong, or those changes
Yeah.
where the change in speed, the change in resistance, that sort of thing. Does the same thing happen when you just throw on resistance like parachutes or towers or stuff like that?
Yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, swimming with like I really like doing the power racks because they're short. They only go about 10 meters, and they can go really heavy. So if somebody has like a lopsided stroke, and you just put that as heavy as possible, and then have them sprint with it, it won't be lopsided because they'll literally be starting and stopping. So then it'll force them to pull like that and pull straight back because if they're pulling out to the side, it's just not an efficient way to solve that task. So rather than in my opinion, it's much more efficient to find a task that solves the problem than us telling them to you need to pull straight back because it's like okay, I that makes sense. But kids have kind of been, at least college kids have been coached so much um, that it's quicker to get them to internalize, and then they kind of feel that they solved the problem themselves, and it kind of builds confidence. And when they race, it's just go as fast as you can
Hmm.
rather than I got to think about where my hand is and how to do this and how I should be breathing. They're just thinking go.
Yeah. If a kid comes to you that day and they're like, "Hey, my stroke just feels off," do you think adding these kind of constraints is a good solution, other than just a verbal "try this"?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying to never give the verbal
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
feedback. There's obviously a lot of work with that, but um, trying to get them to explain like where does it feel off is that just doing that is pretty valuable because if they can explain that, that means they understand it well enough to verbalize. And if they can't explain it, they're at least thinking and doing their best to do that. And then you kind of change equipment or change exercises. And if that feels better, then you can kind of, as the coach, start locating which part of the stroke might be incorrect.
Yeah.